Hi, nice to meet you guys. I'm Jack English, a rising second year CS major. Um, and I'll be going more into depth on the Virtual Reality Artifact Museum as a part of Alison Valk's Empathy Bytes VIP. Um, so she already talked uh a good bit about this, a good a good amount about this, but I'm gonna go a little more in depth. So the main question is, what is the point of a VR museum? Um, I'm going to play this screen recording of it while I talk about it so you can have a little demo. But I think a lot of the benefits of having VR museums like this is accessibility. Um, so artifacts like this, like we know, like the illuminated manuscripts, they can deteriorate over time, even um, in an archive. Like that's just the nature of real objects, is they just, like, even if you keep them very preserved, they'll still like get worse in quality over time. um and also like accessibility, in terms of all of these artifacts were not in um a public exhibit. So there are like thousands of really cool artifacts in the Georgia Tech archive, and only a small handful of them can be viewed by the public at any given point in time. Um, that's just the nature of how real exhibits work. Um, so having virtual museums like this creates so much more accessibility for people to learn about history and things like that. Um, and you can be more intimate with objects as well by actually picking them up and looking at all the sides of them. That's also something you'd never be able to do in a real museum. And then lastly, just like accessibility in terms of geography. Like if there's a exhibit you really want to see, but it's only at a museum in California, then you can't really do anything about that. So all of these things, I think, are benefits to making virtual museums and preserving objects digitally like this. Obviously, real museums still have a lot of really good reasons to exist. This isn't a replacement, but a substitute, um, or in addition to it. So there's that. So if we get into how it was made, again, Allison talked a little bit about this, but to get more in depth into the workflow, um, I first had to look at the archive, the Georgia Tech archive website, find some artifacts that I think would be cool to feature or would be easy, because I was learning throughout this whole semester, so I kind of increased my like skill and like ambition with every object. I would find artifacts that I like. I would email archivists. Allison Reynolds helped a lot, so I'll give a shout out to her at the end as well. But um, once those artifacts are become available by them in the reading room, I take about 200 pictures of them over like 15 minutes. Um, and then I throw those pictures into a photogrammetry software. For most of the semester, I used Apple's Object Capture. On the left, it was an API through a third-party app, but that gave pretty good results. So you throw it at the computer, it renders out for like 15 minutes or something, and then you have a 3D model, but it's not perfect. So I then have to spend a lot of time in Blender editing it. Um, like a lot of times they'll have holes, they'll have like parts of the texture that are not like very clean, or there's some like artifacts on the artifacts, um, and stuff like that. And then also it would spit out an object that was very high poly count, so it wasn't optimized for a video game type setting like this. So it required a lot of editing, and that's one of the biggest takeaways I had from this semester was the immense amount of Blender that I learned has proven to be so helpful in what I want to learn. Um, I went from like very novice to Blender to like very intermediate. Like I've learned so much, and I'm very grateful for that. Um, because I just learned so many techniques, texture painting, like stamping. Like for example, on Converse, you can't see the bottom of the shoe. So I would take a separate picture of the bottom of the shoe and then basically stamp it on. Um, and all these, like optimizing the mesh, all these things. Um, And then we took those models and we put them into Unity with some VR packages so that we could make a nice museum. I didn't work as much on Unity this semester. My teammate John Pham usually did most of that. I did a little bit at setting it up at the beginning, but at the very end of the semester, I discovered another app called Luma AI, which uses a new type of photogrammetry called neural radiance fields. And the results from that were phenomenal. Much cleaner objects. It understood reflections. And you could export it directly from the app with much lower poly counts. So for some objects, you could arguably not even need to edit it in Blender at all. So, and this app was released last year, so this is getting more accessible every year. But it still is, if you want high quality like artifacts to be preserved for eternity, or something like that, it's still good to have some experience in editing them. So with all of that, this is some of my results. I made all of these models except for the one on the bottom left. The one on the bottom left was manually created using Blender, like no photogrammetry, just looking at an image and kind of, using artistic vision. And that's a good model, but you can clearly see the difference in quality between a photogrammetry artifact and a standard one. It's faster. I pumped out 10 artifacts this semester, and they're more realistic. At every one of these objects, I can look at them and see problems with them that I could improve in the future. Because my workflow got better over time. Like this bookend at the top right was my first artifact, and there's some weird kind of like jagged edges on that. This ashtray on the bottom right has some weird like kind of looking things, but they still look good. I didn't make these two models in the center. These were also handmade, but they look good. I made these 3 articles of clothing were the last artifacts I made this semester, and they were made with Luma AI, and they're just so incredibly realistic. And again, they took like very little editing, so that is just very cool that that's possible. And these clothing artifacts were a little more complicated than standard objects. I had to get mannequins and things. And yeah, halfway through the semester, my teammates were interested in learning this workflow as well. So I took a break and I made a 40-minute almost YouTube tutorial. I'm just gonna skip a couple ways through here, like explaining my workflow, so they could learn from it, and we could make artifacts faster. Unfortunately, I don't think any teammates were able to follow my workflow because the software I was using was locked to Apple devices and they didn't have those, which is unfortunate, but I'm looking a lot into finding something that works for everybody, no matter what device they're on. But you can see that other people can learn from this and replicate it too. Now, what's next? I because of everything I learned from this VIP this semester, I was able to get a job with Georgia Tech's OIT, and I'm working on like implementing NVIDIA Omniverse for use on campus by classes and clubs. And I'm using everything I learned from my photogrammetry efforts this semester in this job, and it's great. You can see some high quality renders of my artifacts on the right here. I'm on the bottom right, we're looking to like expand and make other environments that are more like, they can be better grown upon for exhibits and things like that. And then on the bottom left is an entire photogrammetry scan of Klaus Atrium, which took very long and it's very janky looking, but that was, I think this is really cool. This is what I was able to make after this VIP this semester. And that's just like a render of lighting. So yeah, I learned a lot. Thank you again, Allison Valk, and my teammates, my main teammates on the emerging team, John Pham and Jacqueline Lay. And thank you a lot for all your help, the archivist, Allison Reynolds, Kirk Henderson, and others, because it wouldn't be possible without you. And it was very helpful to be able to get artifacts from you guys. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. I really want to state again how much your team's efforts elevated the project, and you've done some amazing work. I can't wait to see what you do next semester for sure.
And I forgot to reference that this QR code links to the presentation if you're interested in saving it or sharing it. But thanks, Allison.
So you're going to continue with this, Jack. So that was my first question. So thanks for answering that, Allison.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to the VIP in the fall, and I'm planning on being the leadership for the emerging tech team because John Pham left this semester. But I'm really looking forward to it.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. That's great. And so you're working with OIT now.
Mhm.
How are you liking that?
It's pretty fun. It's a lot more experimental, because we're trying to see how an engine like Unity, like a separate engine with more capabilities, could be utilized in different scenarios. So I'm just kind of reading a lot of documentation and like making small proof of concepts and things like that.
Oh, nice. Nice. Well, this is great work.
Thank you.
And as a historian, I really doubly appreciate it. So thank you. And thank you, Allison,